All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It is January 24, 2012. Thanks so much for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. Hope you had an awesome day, because we sure have a revealing show in store for you tonight with David Wilson. He is the coordinator of StopInfantCircumcision.org, where they teach people about genital mutilation, what is being hidden from us in regards to circumcision, and protesting all around the country. I'm trying to make, educational efforts on this topic. And, I have to admit this topic is also, it's very new to me. I probably came across the idea about a year ago when, this obviously isn't a topic that's out there in mainstream, so I was just one of those people that just accepted, well, that's just the way we do things, that's the way, that's what we're told, and then, of course, you have religious programming, well, you're unclean, and God says to do this, and totally fell for all of that. But I think as in all of our growth, there comes a time where, I think any of us who listen to this show would probably agree with the fact that everything we thought we knew, we were absolutely lied to about. So what makes this topic any different? So I had to do my search into this, and I hope that, you all will listen with open minds. And still here? Okay. Right. I want to apologize right away. I'm on a wireless connection from my work. We had a little shortage there tonight. So anyways, I'm here to help out. And if the connection isn't as perfectly crystal clear as always, I apologize now. But anyways, I just want to welcome David Wilson to the show here tonight. Once again, the website is StopInfantCircumcision.org. And if you have any questions or comments for him, please feel free to give us a call tonight. The phone number is 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And if you'd like to join us for the text chat, that's over at TruthBrigade.com. David, thank you so much for sharing your time with us here tonight. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm very grateful for you to speak about this and help educate our parents and future parents.
Awesome. Well, me too. I'm really grateful that you're out here educating people about this topic, because I probably never would have come across it, and we would have just turned a blind eye for I don't know how many more generations. But I know, when I talk to people about it, and of course I'm not as educated as you are on the subject, what I commonly hear is, well, I was a baby, I don't remember it. And, the problem is, we do remember it. Our cells remember it. They hold on to those memories. And so, best case scenario, the least harm that's being done is psychological trauma. Of course, the further you delve, it gets much deeper than that. So, David, I really want to thank you for doing everything you can to create awareness about this very hidden topic. David, tell us about your story. Being circumcised, uncircumcised, how did this become such a heavy issue for you in your life?
Well, let's start off with the correct term. I'm a circumcised male, and there's really no such thing as an uncircumcised. You're intact, because you can't undo the damage that's been done. Even though some men have been restoring themselves, but that's something we could talk about later. My mother was from the Bahamas and grew up in Nassau, just across the street from Paradise Island, the bridge rather, and of course, the only way to get off that island was to marry a Navy guy. So I was born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and the second day of my life, I was subjected to one of the worst possible crimes against men that's ever come across in this history of mankind. While visiting my cousins in the Bahamas at 7 years of age, I saw they were different than I. And they were able to shove themselves back up inside of their foreskin. And, of course, I didn't know what it was. I just thought there was two different kinds of, excuse the term, dinglings, but as our parents used to call it. And I just never gave it a thought until I got up to around 12 years of age and overheard my mom talking about this. And I said, well, what is circumcision? She goes, well, when you were born, the doctors thought your dingling was going to be too big, so they cut off a piece. I ran to the bathroom and looked at myself, and I could see the difference in the skin texture and the scarring. And I came to the realization that, oh, my goodness, that they did cut me. But being young and naive, I didn't know what it all entailed. I thought it was the shortening of my penis, per se. And then, of course, after sex ed, I'm 58 years old, so sex education classes in those early days was, really limited. But one of the things that they used to preach down your throat back in 1953 was that 1 out of 100,000 boys might get penile cancer. Well, if you look at those odds, I would have rather take my chances on the penile cancer, and the American Cancer Society today flat out refutes that. But what people don't understand is, why did this get so widely accepted here in America? And the reason being was in the 1860s, during the Victorian era of God country and all that, we thought it was evil for boys and girls to touch themselves. So we started circumcising our males. And what a lot of people don't understand is that we used to put carbolic acid on the clitoris of our little girls to keep them from touching themselves. And most people are appalled when they hear that, but yet they're not appalled when they hear what we do to the infant male. But it's the history of this is just total brutality. It's control, and I've gotten into quite a few arguments on the west side of the U.S. Capitol throughout the last 19 years. And I've gotten into it with Orthodox Jews, people all alike, and at the end of it, they agreed. It was to suppress the sexual urges of the male, to keep their mind more towards the spiritual God aspect of this, of life and everything else. But I can ramble, so you have to stop me.
Yeah, no, please do, because you're really teaching us a lot. I had no idea about the acid on the young girl's clitoris and such. So,
well, and unfortunately, these surgeries are still being done on these girls today. If a female is born with a rather large clitoris, they shave it down and cut it. This should not be something that should be done to our little girls and our intersex children, because 1 out of 200,000, infants born today is an intersex child. So we're having doctors and parents make a decision: do you want a boy or do you want a girl? And the old saying is, easier to make the female than it is to make the male, because the apparatus just doesn't work right. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know how open I can talk about this, but when you remove the foreskin, you remove what is called the ridged band of sexual nerves, which is located inside of the foreskin. So that when a man is masturbating or having sexual intercourse, that foreskin rolls up over the head of the gland, which is where he's supposed to get his sexual pleasure. The ejaculatory thing is just the ending. That's not the big deal of sexual intercourse. It's the act during, leading up to that particular point. I'll give you a little example. 4 years ago, I was up on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, and I'm from Cocoa Beach, Florida, where we launched the shuttles and all our rockets and stuff. And I had a gentleman come up and introduce himself, and he says, hey, I'm so-and-so. I'm a German rocket scientist, and I just left Kennedy Space Center. And he says, you know what I find so fascinating in your country is that everywhere you go, there's sexual lubricants. 7-Eleven, Publix, all your pharmacies, everywhere you go, there's an aisle for sexual lubricants. In Germany, his country, that's a non-issue. You got to go to a specialized sex shop. What happens is every time the circumcised male is retracting from his female partner, that backward head of a plunger is dragging out the vaginal fluids. I don't care how good that guy thinks he is. Every time he retracts, he's dragging you out, and he will create friction, dryness, friction, and pain. Most women here in America that I talk to, and especially the young girls up on the west side of the Capitol, I don't even get this conversation out of my mouth, and they said that's why sex is painful. And that's exactly why sex is painful.
Wow.
We've destroyed the natural sleeve. The sexual intercourse incorporates the gripping of the vaginal wall against the male's prepuce foreskin, which works as a plug, which keeps most of the vaginal fluid in and reduces that friction. And then as he's retracting, it's the penile gland is sliding on the inside of the foreskin. It's not the penile gland rubbing the vaginal wall. So that when he retracts, the foreskin will roll up over the head of the gland, which gives him sexual pleasure. But because of the double fold layer of skin, it causes the penis to get thicker, which provides a bumping action to the root of the clitoris, which gives a female a deeper vaginal orgasm. Part of our biggest problem here today with divorce and everything else is that we have people that are just not sexually satisfied. And it all falls back into this insanity of the 1860s. And back in the 1860s, the logic was you got married to somebody, you didn't get divorced. It was till death do you part. Well, they claim that the male would not know what he's missing because he never had it, and the female won't know what she's missing because she never had experienced it. Well, today we're seeing more and more that this rate is dropping. The cut rate here in America. We went from, I think it was in 2006, 60-some% of our boys were being cut, down to 2009, 32% are being cut.
Wow.
And yeah.
Jump. I remember from the 70s to the 90s, it was 90%. Then it went down to 60%. So, I mean, that shows a lot of progress. And you just shared with us it's getting even lower.
And you know why? And that's the Internet. Parents are actually going and researching this and learning. You got to admit, we've been lied to for years about everything. We're finding out now how the government works. We're finding out how our medical organizations work. I mean, you can't hide the truth, and this is the truth. Most of the men in the world are not cut. The biggest cutters in the world are your Jews and Muslims for religious reasons, and your Americans for cosmetic reasons. There's a picture of a map on our website that shows who cuts in the world. And when you hear about a European lover, Latin lover, Caribbean lover, these guys are hanging. You know, that's where this term comes from. Let me give you a little something here. You know who the Kinsey Institute is?
Sure do.
They have been our #1 sexual research organization in America since the 40s, 50s. I had a conversation with the director, John Bancroft, a few years ago, and I said, I've been searching your website and your archives, and I can't find any research on the foreskin. Have you never done any research on the sexual function of the foreskin? Mr. Bancroft wrote me back, and he says, Mr. Wilson, we've never done that. You raise a very interesting question. How can you possibly do sexual research on a mutilated male and not compare it to and I know a lot of people are going to be screaming their heads off about being mutilated. They don't consider it a mutilation, but look it up in the book, in the dictionary or encyclopedia. When you remove healthy, normal tissue, you're mutilating something, whether
Absolutely.
it's
for disease prevention. I mean, that's I was reading some of the stuff, as you mentioned before, 1 in 100,000 might get penile cancer? I mean, come on. How is that any different? And once again, getting back to most of the people who listen to our show, they know the truth about vaccines and all of these things. So how is that any different? Oh, 1 in 100,000 might get cancer, so we're just going to snip it off. You know what? We can stop breast cancer by cutting off everybody's boobs.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No, that's a big argument today. We can
cut off stomach cancer by cutting out your stomach.
Yeah, well, we don't, we bring this up to people all the time. We can prevent a lot of breast cancer if we just remove a young girl's breast prior to this nightmare. But unfortunately,
it's for your own good.
Yep, well, and that's what the thinking was back then. Because when I was in elementary school, getting into junior high, and this was one of the big arguments about the penile cancer thing, I said, well, that doesn't make sense. I saw my cousins. If it was so good, why weren't all men cut? And I said that those odds, I'll take my chances on those odds, 100,000 to 1. Well, now you go to the American Cancer Society's website, and they flat out refute that. There's no correlation. Of course, I can hear it from doctors and nurses that might be calling you. Have you ever seen a man that has cancer of the penis? Well, there's always an exception to the rule. And
absolutely. I'm so sorry, David. It is that time, though, okay? So hold that right there. We're going to be right back. Stay tuned, everyone. David Wilson here on Truth Brigade. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. And if you'd like to join us for the text chat tonight, that's over at TruthBrigade.com. Any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call at 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And a couple of comments in the text chat I'd like to talk about. But David, and once again, the website is stopinfantcircumcision.org. We left off talking about presumed disease prevention, right? And so I remember the cancer lie, and there was also this big push. They were saying that if you are circumcised, you are less likely to get AIDS. And AIDS is a whole other topic because it's not real to begin with. But we've done that show already. But, just to show how ridiculous this is. Tell us the truth about that, David.
Well, I was fixing to bring this up myself because I could just hear the wheels turning in people's heads that circumcision is supposedly can prevent HIV and other STDs. Now, let's think about this for a second. The first case of HIV in America was diagnosed a little over 30 years ago. That puts us close to the 70s, going into the 80s, right around in that part. And you already said that in the 70s, 90-some% of infant boys were circumcised. Mm. So if you go back and you look at the HIV rate, most are sexually active males in that era, that time bracket, were circumcised. It did not stop nor slow the spread of HIV. Safe sex, condoms, and leaving the prostitutes alone is what slowed the spread of HIV. I've sent stuff to Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, and now I'm going to send stuff to Bono with U2. These fools are over there. Bill Gates has donated $50 million. The United States is spending $1.5 million to try to circumcise every male in Africa because they believe that will slow or stop the spread of HIV. All you got to do is look at our own country. It didn't stop or slow the spread of HIV. Most of our men were cut. And if you look at Denmark and the countries that do not circumcise their boys, they don't have a widespread HIV problem.
Yeah.
The foreskin, and, let me drift off here for a second. A lot of people say you get smegma off of the foreskin. You got to get in there and you got to clean and you got to do this. Well, we're finding out now that this same smegma that everybody's been trying to wipe out for all these years actually has a vaccine type of an effect. It hinders the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases. It is a natural protective covering, which not only we going back to the foreskin covering up the head of the gland, which keeps it soft and moist, but it's also there to help remove any impurities per se that can transmit. So the HIV thing is a big lie. We're over there now, like I said, Bill Gates, 50 million, Bill Clinton, he's promoting it. And unfortunately, Bill Clinton is a victim of this. You know, if you're not sexually satisfied in your home, you're going to run down the street. And he doesn't want to acknowledge the fact that he's not sexually satisfied at home for more than one reason. But he's a cut male. Yeah, we're never sexually satisfied. I've heard it from many. A cut male can have sex and wants to have sex all over again. I've had women tell me that they've had an intact guy orgasm, and he literally, his body just drains. He's just wasted. You know, he's it's more of an intense orgasm for him. So, excuse me, getting to the HIV thing, that's an absolute lie. That doesn't hold water. Of course, now the penile cancer thing, there has been an increase of penile cancer in Brazil, in that area of South America, but they attribute it to, I hate to say this, but these guys are having sex with chickens. I'm only telling you what I read, and these are medical journals, and there is not one medical organization in the world that supports routine infant circumcision. I don't know of any babies that are contracting HIV, so they don't need to be protected. When they get old enough to make a decision, do they want to be a tramp or want to be respectful or whatever? Let them make that decision then. There's no need to do this. And here's another thing for you. People don't understand that we have children die all the time here in America from circumcision.
Yes. Tell us about the stats on that, David.
Well, we warn our parents that 11 babies will die in a car seat this year. Well, unfortunately, 117 will die strapped to a circumstraint. They bleed to death. They get MRSA infections. And I challenge anybody out there, go look at a child that's contracted MRSA in his genital areas, and you can hear my voice crack because this bothers me. And I hear parents say, oh, that won't happen to my child. But it could happen to your child. It happens all the time. We just had a baby boy die in Texas. We had another infant, I'll get into the New York infants that died here in a minute. But an infant only needs to lose about an ounce of blood, and he's going into shock and dying. That's why today a lot of midwives and nurses and everybody are saying, don't clamp off the umbilical cord too quickly, because all the blood in the placenta needs to drain into the child, which gives the child a better fighting chance against jaundice and some other things. But we've got doctors that are taking infant boys freshly out of the intensive care unit and circumcising them before they go home. A lot of these baby boys are dying. Like I said, we just had another one die in Texas. It's all over Facebook and everything. But people don't understand that your child, not only can that child die, a lot of children lose their entire penile gland. I don't know how many photos I've seen, and I had to quit looking at these things because they're just so heartbreaking, that these doctors get so fast at what they're doing or just careless, and They cut off the head of the gland. They got to sew it back on. They just mutilate the child. And if you really want to see something horrible, go look up a little baby boy that's got MRSA in his genital areas. It's unbelievable. And if no medical organization in the world supports this, what are we doing? The number one Hippocratic oath is first, do no harm. But when you can make money off of removing the foreskin, then you take that foreskin and you sell it to the pharmaceutical companies, then they in turn genetically can grow off of one infant's foreskin 6 football fields of skin at $3,000 an 11 square inch patch. They use them for burn victims. Well, of course, I've had people say, well, you know, that's
that. Amazing.
What's that?
I was reading about that, and that's just amazing how much they're able to reproduce. And tell us more, David, and of course, what they're doing with it.
Well, the thing is that in order to take these foreskins and grow this tissue that they use for burn victims and things of that nature, you cannot administer any anesthesia because it somehow destroys the natural cell-making ability and whatever of the foreskin. So the doctors, the pharmaceutical companies are pushing the doctors in the hospitals to circumcise without anesthesia so that they can then collect and harvest the foreskin so that they can grow either tissue, skin with the foreskin, or in Oprah Winfrey's case, I think I told you before we got online, is one of the biggest hypocrites in the world today. She bitches and moans about female genital cutting. But yet she rants and raves about a facial cream she uses, and she goes, oh, it gets rid of your wrinkles, it makes your skin so soft, and the best thing about it, it's made from discarded foreskins. These aren't discarded foreskins. These are stolen foreskins from the owner of that foreskin. That may be your baby, but that's his body. And you know, we shouldn't go altering that child's body just because we want him to look like daddy. One of the biggest things that I hear is that, oh, I wanted my son to look like me. I don't know too many men standing around looking at his son's penis and yours and compare him. But the other thing is, if daddy lost a finger or an ear, you wouldn't go hunt down Junior and cut his finger or ear off. You know, we've got to come to the realization that they lied to us. Our government, our people, the people in control, going back to the government, Victorian era, and the doctors back then, that they lied to us. The same way we're learning today about how corrupt our government is. Let me tell you something. Bill Gates recently bought 500,000 shares of Monsanto's. You know who they are?
Mm-hmm. Sure do.
Yeah, genetically altered seed thing. He's part of the New World Order here, which, you know, I don't want to go into that one, but we've got too many people on this planet. We've got to start killing some people off. But Bill Gates here not only has invested in Monsanto's, but he's investing in circumcising every male in Africa. And what they're going to find, and we have the studies that disprove this, they cut these studies short because they got the results what they thought they had. There hasn't been no follow-up. Nobody has followed up on these men that have been circumcised to find out if they did contract HIV. You know, if you take and you look at the reasons why we cut our males and the same reasons why we cut our females, well, not we, Muslims and other cultures, whether it's for religious or cultural reasons, it's the same reasons. Oh, it's hideous. It needs to be cleaned. No man would want a woman that is unsightly and dirty. And these are the same things that we call intact male. Intact male, dirty. You know, you talk to a lot of women, they go, oh, my God, that's so gross. It's horrible. It looks ugly. Well, do you want looks or do you want sexual function? And every woman that I've talked to that's been with an intact male, they'll tell you there's a night and day difference. And I could get into that one there.
I've read a lot about that. I mean, it's really simple to me, and, it really just blows my mind that this is used for religious reasons, being that whatever religion you are, God, or whatever you want to call him or her, is the all-encompassing, right? This powerful force, the creator of all. Well, is this creator stupid? Did they make a mistake when they created men? Just, thank God we have men in white coats.
Well, yes. So you raise a very good point there, because when I was a young boy and I heard about this, and then I heard about, the Bible and this or that, and one of the things that I've been writing about here lately is Tim Tebow. And you know who he is. He's the former University of Florida a quarterback who's now the quarterback of Denver Broncos and blah, blah, blah. He's the one that created Tebowing, where he's kneeling and praying, and and I give the boy credit. I mean, he made it up into the playoffs there and whatnot. But he runs off, and he's always putting during his college years, he put Bible verses underneath his eyes, in white on the black. And, he's a very religious man, and yet he goes over to the Philippines to his father's missionary, and he has been performing circumcisions, assisting in circumcisions of boys over there. Wow. Well, this man needs to read the New Testament. The New Testament is riddled with do not circumcise your sons. I mean, this guy has apparently never read the New Testament, and yet he's over there acting like he's doing God's work. And, I'm not a religious guy. I'm not an NFL guy, but I got to tell you, I'm so sick and tired of this guy claiming to have his faith. And you go to Galatians 6:15, circumcision has no value to God. Faith is all that matters to the Lord. 1 Corinthians 7:18, do not circumcise believers. Galatians 5:2, circumcising for God will forfeit your salvation. And
absolutely, David. I thank you so much for sharing that with us. But it's that time again, so hold that right there, and we'll continue right where we left off after this short break. Stay tuned. David Wilson here on Truth Brigade Radio. All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining us here tonight with David Wilson on Truth Brigade Radio. He is the creator of the organization StopInfantCircumcision.org, and check out the website and find out their next events where you can help get the word out. But David, I really appreciate you sharing those Bible verses with us. And, I'm definitely not a Bible thumper, and you certainly aren't yourself. But, I live in the Bible Belt, so that's another one of those common things we get. Well, God said so. And, do you know that because God told you, or because somebody told you that God said that, or somebody told you that the Bible said that? So clearly, these people didn't actually read the entire book, that which they profess to live to. So please continue. I'd like to hear some more, David.
Well, let's look at the religious aspect of this. When I hear people say it's in the Bible, I go, have you read the Bible? And they look at me, and I got them, because they haven't read the entire Bible. All they know is that in the Old Testament is the talk of circumcision. And that was in an era and time where circumcision wasn't what it is today. I've had this argument with Orthodox Jews on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, and I don't want to demean or be mean or what's the right word? Shut your religion down. But I get into these arguments all the time. I had a Jewish mechanical engineer having this debate with me. And after I explained the mechanics of sexual intercourse with the intact male, he goes, that makes sense. Yes. He goes, I'm an engineer. And I said, well, then are you going to stop? And he says, no, it's my covenant to God. And I look at our Jewish friends when they're arguing this with me, and I said, well, let me get this straight. Please answer these questions for me. You practice the first 5 books of the Torah. And I had to learn to use that word rather than Bible because they frown on that word. But I said, in there you talk of circumcision. They go, yes, that's our covenant to God. I go, well, you also talk about slaughtering animals to please your God and stoning adulterous women to death. When's the last time you slaughtered an animal to please your God and stoned an adulterous woman to death? And he goes, well, we know better than to do that now. But I go, well, then you should know better than to be cutting up your sons. And just for all your Jewish listeners that are freaking out right now, go to JewsAgainstCircumcision.org, and they will answer all your questions. Not all your Jews in the world are cutting their boys. Even in Israel.
I dated one from Israel, and he was, I think, the only guy that I've known on that level that was not circumcised.
And should we ask how your experience was? No.
Well, if I remembered, I would tell you. That was long, long ago.
Yeah. But, you know, we all have, some women I've talked to, they said, oh, no, I've had a bad experience with a guy. And, well, there's always an exception to the rule. But in general, once you, especially American women, now European women and other women, Caribbean and South American stuff, they think the circumcised male looks ugly. You know, so it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but we have taught our youth that the intact
we're told what is beautiful is what's in a magazine, and then we just start accepting that as fact without even looking internally at.
Do you know?
We don't even know the other side. So
do you know that the very first pinup in Playgirl magazine was an intact male?
Nice.
And they caught so much flack over that then they drifted away from that. They were putting typical normal cut male, centerfolds. But somebody at that point, realized that this is the natural male. And like I said before, if you go and compare the reasons that we cut our boys and some tribes, cultures, and religions cut their girls, they think it's ugly. That no man would want something that looks like that, so they cut them up. And of course, it's horrible, but it's no worse than what we're doing to our boys. I challenge anybody out there that thinks that this is okay to watching circumcision videos. They're on YouTube. Just go look at it.
Yeah.
And
so anyone who watches that can't use the argument that, oh, well, they're just babies. They can't feel it.
We used to do open heart surgeries on infants because we said they don't feel it. Well, now we know that's not true. In 1999, CNN did a study on infant circumcision, and they stopped it because they saw these babies suffering trauma that the reporters couldn't deal with it no more. They're watching this go on, and listen, anytime you cut something and you're bleeding, something ain't right, and take a good look at what's happening to this kid. I've had so many mothers and in conversations and Facebook pages and things of this nature, and they said, well, they brought him back to me and he was sleeping. Well, he didn't sleep through it. He went into shock. It's called shock. I have nurses that will tell you right now.
Yes.
Matter of fact, one of the most prominent, and they call us now intactivists, but yet the dictionaries have not accepted that term yet, but yet we accepted Tebowing this year. That kills me. We've been being called intactivists, which is an activist that for intactivism. And it blows my mind that as a society, we think it's perfectly okay to strap a child to a plastic conformed circumstance And if you've ever watched these people advertise these things, they say, oh, and the Velcro straps are padded so that it doesn't hurt his wrist or his ankles.
Oh, how sweet.
Well,
yeah,
how sweet.
Velcro padded while you're using a clamp and cutting off, 15? How many square inches of skin is it?
It's almost the size of an index card for the adult male.
Yeah.
And so... Well, I've got to be careful because some of the things I say, I can get carried away there. But when you look at
15 square inches, right? I'm probably more.
That's like 3 by 5. That's like a 3 by 5 index card. Mm-hmm. So if you add that to the male's anatomy, and as you're, how can I put this? Are we safe? For a male, when he's masturbating, we have a banner. It's 4 foot by 10 foot. It's black with white letterings, and it says, whose penis, whose body, whose rights. I have that up on the U.S. Capitol grounds, and let me tell you, the U.S. Capitol Police know me. I've been going up there for, like I said, for 17 years. This is my 19th year, but 2 years
You're on a first-name basis.
Hanging out from the White House. And these cops... they know me, even in the special events permitting office. They know me. They've seen me there for years. I've been going to Washington, D.C. for 22 years protesting for fathers' rights, period. That's FathersDayDemonstration.org. So you fathers, I'm one of these few that got custody of his daughters back in 1986, and it was unheard of for a man. And I had long curly hair at that time. I got dreadlocks down my back now. Too bad they can't see me. But you'll see some photos of me at the Facebook page, which is Stop Infant Circumcision Society. And these officers come out and they take information from me. They want to hear what I have to say. And it's been a very pleasurable experience. Leonard Lee with the U.S. Park Service, Officer Gable with the Metropolitan Police. They know I've been there. I'm going to continue to go there.
Awesome, David. I want to talk about how we can get more involved in, luring and spreading the word about this. But somebody's on the text chat asking about, I know earlier you brought up victims of circumcision. What about David Reimer? Or is it Reimer?
That is probably one of the worst cases that you will hear. I think it's David Reimer. Him and his twin brother, 18 months old, went in for a urinary tract infection. The doctor decided to circumcise them, that they got a urinary tract infection because they have a foreskin. Well, guess what? Even if you remove the foreskin, you still got to give them antibiotics to kill the infection. So why not just give them the antibiotic and kill the infection and leave their penis alone? Well, unfortunately for David, he was the first twin. They tried to circumcise him, and the doctor used a newfangled laser. This was like 37 years ago. And fried his penis off.
Wow, David, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but it's that time again, so we'll be back for the much longer segment and continue this story about David Reimer and many others and what's really going on. The Truth About Circumcision tonight with David Wilson. StopInfantCircumcision.org is the website, but we will be right back. Stay tuned. Truth Brigade Radio. Right, welcome back. Top of the second hour here tonight. Thanks so much for joining us here, Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. We are talking about the truth about circumcision with David Wilson. StopInfantCircumcision.org is the website. And if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to give us a call tonight at 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525. And if you'd like to join us on the text chat tonight, that's over at TruthBrigade.com. David, we left off talking about David Reimer, so please continue.
Yep. Unfortunately, David Reamer, when he was 18 months of age, him and his brother were taken in for a urinary tract infection. The doctor, now we're going back 38, maybe 40 years ago, this doctor had a newfangled laser. So he said, well, in order to get rid of this infection, we need to get rid of the cause, which is the foreskin. And so he proceeded to circumcise him with this laser, and he subsequently fried his penis off. Wow. So, enter Dr. Money, of all names. Dr. Money claims that it's not whether you're born man or woman, it's how you're raised. So what he was saying is that let's castrate him, make whatever we can of a vagina, and raise him as a girl. They wiped out all the photos of him being a little boy, and they proceeded to raise him as a girl. Well, when he got to be around 12, 13 years of age and having slumber parties and being with other little girls, he saw that he was different than other little girls. And he says, Mom, I just don't feel right. I want to be with my brother playing with toys and trucks and dirt and this and da-da-da-da-da. Wow. And the family admitted to him or confessed what happened. When he got to be around 16, 17 years of age, if I recall the story correctly, he went to the doctor's office of the man that mutilated him with a loaded gun. He was going to kill him. But instead of killing him, he broke down in tears, and he lived his life as this messed up man, woman, whatever you wanted to call him at this point. Well, later on in life, he had reconstructive surgery to try to create a penis. Well, we know that we can't create those. It could be used for urinary reasons and things of that nature, but as far as a functioning sexual organ, we have not perfected that yet. But he tried to live his life as a man. He got married to a woman that had 3 children. Well, you know darn well if you don't have an active or healthy sex life, your relationship's going to deteriorate. And she ended up divorcing him, and I guess it was maybe 5-6 years ago that he committed suicide. And the only thing that the newspapers could say is that he was in financial ruin, which led him to his suicide. Well, his financial ruin was the direct result of his sexual ruination, so to speak. But unfortunately, going back to intersex children, Oprah did a show, for a 58-year-old man with dreads down his back and a white boy on top of it. And for me to be watching Oprah, so anyway, she had a show on there one time of a couple women rather. One was probably 38, 40 years of age, and when she was 13 years of age, her parents forced her to undergo a vaginal opening, which meant when she was born, she had no vaginal opening, and she had a rather large clitoris. Well, her parents never bothered to tell her that once they got done doing the vaginal opening so that they could have a grandchild, they removed her large clitoris. So where she was able to touch herself and have some pleasure, her genitals were now dead because of the surgery. And she was in tears in Oprah's show. This is one of the 2,000 born every year that they're being subjected to this type of surgery, and this should not be happening. I believe in evolution. Wow. I think we're all headed to being hermaphrodites more so than being where we're at. I know that's far-fetched. Catch hell for that saying, but nobody had the right to alter this young girl's body at 12 or 13 years of age. Let her become an adult and make a decision on her own. The same way we say No infant's going to contract HIV. It's only when you get, over the age or when you're sexually active and you want to risk your, engage in risky behavior. That's up to you, But unfortunately, though, this is going on every day here in America. People think this doesn't happen. This is happening right now.
And it's getting worse, and just, the lack of education is, too. I also want to bring up something else about Reamer that, kind of correlates to what you and I were talking about before the show and the female genital mutilation going on at Cornell University with Dix Pappas. But listen to this, and I'm reading this straight from Wikipedia, so could be true. You never know, but it does have footnotes. So after they did the surgery, they figured that he should be able to practice, his gender reassignment. And anyways, I'll just read word for word. It says, Dr. Money forced the twins to rehearse sexual acts involving thrusting movements, with David playing the bottom role. As a child, David Reamer painfully recalled to having to get down on all fours with his brother Brian up behind his butt with his crotch against his buttocks. In another sexual position, Dr. Money forced David to have his legs spread with Brian on top. He also forced the children to take their clothes off and engage in genital inspections. On at least one occasion, Dr. Money took a photograph of the two children doing these activities. Dr. Money's rationale for these various treatments was his belief that childhood sexual rehearsal play was important for a healthy adult gender identity. I mean, I don't know. I'm starting to wonder if these people are not pedophiles as well. And, we talked about Dix Pappas on the show before, who is mutilating young women, little girls, who he believes that their clitoris is too big. But, hey, don't worry, here's the good news. His surgery is so unique and wonderful, and it's proven different because he basically masturbates them with vibrators in front of their parents most of the time, or at least one parent, to make sure that they still have feeling. And don't worry, it's not touching the nerve endings. How sick is that, and how far are we away from everybody being mutilated as children?
We are so out of touch with reality if we allow this man, and you know what? I've heard about this guy, and I put it out on my website and the mailing list and Facebook that I'm going to go to his offices this year and demonstrate in front of him. I'm going to make that a priority because this man is a sick individual.
Awesome.
What you need to do is attach a electrode or whatever to his penis, pecker, whatever you want to call it. And and let's find out if he's getting aroused while he's arousing these young girls. This goes back to John Kellogg. You know who he is?
His off, right? How do you like this? Is that good?
John Kellogg.
Vibrator.
John Kellogg was the creator of Kellogg's cornflakes. He created Kellogg's cornflakes to work as a sexual suppressant. Most people don't know that. All throughout my young childhood, that's all we ever ate was Kellogg's cornflakes. He was in a battle with Graham over the term granola, copyright. And this is and where Kellogg created Kellogg's cornflakes to work as a sexual suppressant, Graham created graham crackers to be a sexual suppressant. These are some of the most sick individuals that we've ever listened to in America, aside from our politicians, but we won't go there. But think about what this man is doing. This man is shaving down the clitoris of little girls because it's big. And who's to say it's too big? More is better. That's the American way. And I mean, possessions and stuff, not so much the sexuality part of it, but think about it. Because this little girl's clitoris is too big, or bigger than what the parents think it should be, this doctor is shaving it down and then electrically with a vibrator stimulating them to show that, she still has sexual pleasure. Well, yeah, you still got sexual pleasure.
Isn't that insane?
As a circumcised male, I still have sexual pleasure, but I don't have what our evolutionary...
put a vibrator on my back or my neck or my arms. There's still going to be sexual pleasure.
But, I look at them the same way I look at detectives that are looking porn all day. The hook of an electrode up to their pecker, and as soon as he gets a hard on, you're off the case. These are all, granted we're trying to combat a crime there, and I hate to make the correlation, but we have these doctors that have been claiming circumcision will cure everything from clubfoot to epilepsy, tuberculosis, to gangrene, to, you go and look at the list. Circumcision is a result looking for a cure, looking for a disease. It is, every year we keep coming up with something new, ever since the 1860s. First it was the masturbation hysteria, then it was the penile cancer, then it was to cure clubfoot, bedwetting, to cure the rapist. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing, and any human being that can read, go read this, and let me backpedal a little bit about the religious aspect of this. Circumcision wasn't, the original Jewish circumcision was not the total removal of the foreskin. It was just a little nick of the foreskin at the end to draw blood. But then it became an identity thing. It became a way to separate yourself from supposedly the common man and this or that. But we can go back in history, and the first people to use circumcision were the Egyptians. They used circumcision to mark their slaves, which, falls back into World War II, where if, the Germans found a man wandering the countryside, they made him drop his pants, and if he was cut, you're being hauled off. You know what I mean? But I've had this argument with Orthodox Jews on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, and they have agreed with me. They said, yes, you're correct. But it was to suppress those sexual desires where you're not focusing your energy on your genitals, but towards your love and preaching and support and whatever of some God, which we need to get off of that kick, because this universe is a lot older and longer than some little story that was told. The BC Comics had it very good. You get the BC Comics in your paper? It's a 3-pane little thing, and you got two guys sitting there, and he goes, you think we'll have a bestseller one day? The other one looks at him and says, no doubt, and they shut this book, and it's the Bible. It's a very nicely written story, but it's flawed, So let's look at the evolution of man. Man has been running around with a foreskin since he crawled out of the freaking jungles of South Africa.
Absolutely.
So where is the problem? Mankind has created the problem. He's created an illness that didn't exist. Clubfoot? What the heck does your foreskin got to do with clubfoot? Well, you want to know why?
Reasoning on that.
Well, I'll have to think about the doctor's name, but what he did was there was a young boy that was suffering some paralyzing illness, and the doctor said, oh, doctor, his penis is very swollen and blah, blah. Well, he couldn't stretch his legs out. So they circumcised this boy, and damn if his legs didn't straighten out. So all of a sudden, this doctor thinks that a cure for paralysis is circumcision. Explain that to me. I'd love to have these guys in front of me, because I'd slap the hell out of them. If I thought I could grab the doctor that cut me, I would have a very good time beating him up. But then again,
Well,
he
in all
was doing
fairness, he probably doesn't know. I mean, he is an MD, so he is subject to their laws and their propaganda, 8 to 12 years in their medical school.
Well, he was probably a medical student. You know, it's amazing. I've had people write to me and say, I'm a medical student, and I witnessed my first circumcision, and I have now left the medical field. It was so traumatic to them to witness this little infant screaming his lungs out. And I know your listeners, some of them are probably just a little freaked out over what I'm saying. But I challenge you to go watch a video of a circumcision and watch that baby boy scream at the top of his lungs, gasping for air, and pass out. That is exactly what happened.
One on the forum, and unfortunately, I guess I don't know, my internet connection isn't working that well, so I'm not able to post it on the chat, but I'll post it here in Skype, and then if somebody can post it so everybody can see it, and we're coming up on a break here, so no excuses. You'll have plenty of time to watch it, and, you know, hopefully everyone will do that, and we could talk about it after, but it's just absolutely horrific. Just, you know, tears to my
society.
I'd like to see, you know, whatever done that can be done to stop this torture. And you know what? If you want to sell your foreskin as adult or cut it off, go for it. That's your choice. But children, no excuse. It's that time. We will be right back. Stay tuned. Truth Brigade, welcome back. Thanks for joining us here tonight. Truth Brigade on AmericanFreedomRadio.com. David Wilson is the creator and director of StopInfantCircumcision.org, and I really appreciate you joining us here for this very informative topic, David. Once again, that's StopInfantCircumcision.org, and I'm kind of surprised we have any callers tonight, though, so don't be shy. Our number is 218-339-8525. That's 218-339-8525, and if you'd like to join us on that, well, not me, since my internet's not working, but on the chat, that's over at TruthBrigade.com. But David, let's continue where we left off, please. That break came in kind of quick, so.
And we were where, I'm there. Where were we? I'm sorry.
We were just talking about several of the atrocities, the things that, you know, the medical community has kind of, you know, forced down our throat to get us to believe that this is actually okay. And, you know, I'm just amazed that more people aren't questioning it or looking into it. However, the numbers that you cited earlier and the stats on your website clearly prove that people are kind of waking up, so to speak, and actually, you know, taking their child's future into their own hands and questioning the mainstream lies. So, let me ask you this. How can we better inform people about this? And of course, how can we educate ourselves more about this topic?
Well, one of our biggest problems is the fact that the American Academy of Pediatricians, even though they came out years ago that said there is no valid medical indication for circumcision in the neonatal period, they're so politically correct that they don't want to offend their religious groups and parents that have cut their kids. And unfortunately, for men that have been subjected to this, we have to get over it. We have to understand that this should not be done to my son. And like I said before, a lot of fathers want their sons cut because they don't want their sons to be the odd man out in the gym. Well, you know, that's changing so much. I think I had mentioned I was getting some photos from Eckert's Drugs before it became CDS. This was years ago, and this gentleman, he was in back of me. He goes, "Buddy, what do you got there?" And I go, "Well, I told him what I do. I go to D.C., I protest." And he says, "You know, it was only 2," and he said uncircumcised, and I corrected him, intact, guys in his high school. One was the high school quarterback football star, and him. Well, he was a scrawny little guy, and he said every day at gym class, these boys would hold him down by his arms and legs and point at his penis and laugh at him.
Wow.
And I said, well, buddy, I said, you could have that last laugh because you're having better sex than they could ever dream of. And he walked away so happy. And this was 12 years ago, not in the digital age film. But then 3 months ago, I had a guy follow me into the local mall, and he knows me. He goes, David, what is this? What do you know? And we started talking, and he cut me off, and he says, hey, I was born in the islands, and I was adopted by my mother. And he's a white boy, though. And but his mother lived in the islands, and so she had experienced intact males. And his adopted mother chose to keep him intact. And surprising, he survived being in an adoption agency or home or whatever without getting cut.
Wow.
I've had women come up to me and tell me they've adopted their children, and the boy was intact, and she takes him in for physical and everything. And she goes, well, is there anything that I need to really be concerned about? And the doctor goes, well, he hasn't been circumcised. We might as well, And she goes ahead and does that. And then yet after talking to me, she goes, oh, my God, did I make a mistake? I said, you're damn right you made a mistake. But yet here you had a healthy, normal boy, and yet you chose to alter him or according to the thinking of the American doctor and way of thinking. What kills me is that you hear about parents birthing their child at home because they don't want no hospital intervention.
Yes.
And then what do? They take the kid to the pediatrician and then have him circumcised. Yeah. You want a natural, healthy home birth, and then you turn around and rip your son apart. I mean, talk about idiosyncrasies but...
that doesn't sound very logical.
So what is the biggest question on your mind on this?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'd really love to know how we can educate or inform others without offending them, either their religion or their beliefs, because, I mean, as we watched the video before the break, right? Or some of us did on the chat. I see some people watched it. What it's like with an infant being circumcised. I personally don't understand how anyone can watch that and not see that it is clearly torture. So,
yeah.
What do you think is a good way to reach out to people without offending them and have them taking a stance and wanting to beat us up or, oh, that's crazy talk and we just do it because we do? I mean, how do we get people to listen?
Well, since you mentioned beat you up, let me tell you, several years ago I was protesting up in Pittsburgh, I think it was Pittsburgh. We're at a convention Philadelphia Convention Center. And we had one corner and the pro-life groups had the other corners. And, we had a couple words with each other, but, blah, blah, blah. But I had a guy come up to me and he starts talking about this. And I'm having a I don't hold no punches. I've been holding back even though I've gotten pretty vocal over this. But when I'm on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, I wear a long-sleeve shirt so that I can actually show the function of the foreskin. And these future parents, their eyes light up. And I'll have a boy in the back there go, hey, he knows what he's talking about. I go, you're intact. And I said, buddy, when these girls find out about you, and then the girl goes, oh, Jeremy, I said, you're going to be a wanted man. But what we have to understand, and unfortunately, it's a low blow for men because we want to think we're the biggest, the best, and everything, and yet we're not. because we're missing a very major part of the natural act of sexual reproduction. Whether we're completing that aspect of it or not, that's not it. What we are doing is going through sexual intercourse, and you can either wear your old lady out, and I use that, and God, that's a bad term to use.
I kind of like it.
you can wear her out, or you can be intact, and the enjoyment level is completely different. I am with a woman here now in my life that has been with 2 intact guys, and we make no bones about talking about this. I have to do things differently in order to not wear her out. I have so many men tell me, when I start talking about this, the pros and cons, and they go, I hate to say this, I tore that, the P word up. And they go, well, if you tore it up, you're doing it wrong. Because a man should be able to have sex with his wife, morning, noon, and night, girlfriend, whatever, without any sexual pain. But if a cut guy has sexual intercourse with a female, he's got to leave her alone for a couple of days so she can heal. That's not normal. That's not normal. I mean, you really, I don't know what to go from there. I mean,
Let me ask you about, I know they have surgeries to replace them. Do you know anything about that, and how viable a solution is that for those who maybe are just discovering this topic and kind of want to try it on for size?
Good. I'm glad you said that. My buddy's name is Ron Lowe, and he has a website. It's called tlctugger.com. And what happens is...
TLCTugger?
Yes, .com.
Okay. All right.
And what he has developed is an apparatus that can stretch what remaining foreskin you have. And it takes a while. The younger you are, and I suggest all your younger listeners start now because it's easier to do this. The same way that I told you about growing skin off of the foreskin, what happens is, you know when you've seen kids that are conjoined and they put a balloon in their head to stretch the skin? Well, what you are doing is it's not a balloon. Well, of course, one guy did have a balloon thing, but that happens, Trip. What you do, you're actually stretching your foreskin, and it's a device that it's like a cone shape that can grip what you have left, and you tend to stretch it. And while you stretch it, the skin rebuilds itself. So you stretch, rebuild, and you can eventually cover up the entire gland, your head of your gland. Unfortunately, though, you're not going to get back the ridged band of sexual nerves. But what you are going to do, you're going to cover up the head of your gland, with the previous foreskin.
Because, I mean, it just seems like poor little boys are just, so open and exposed. Their natural layer of protection is gone.
It's the worst thing you can do.
I'm willing to bet that it was put there for a reason.
Well, look at it this way. Have you ever put a Band-Aid on your finger and left it there for too long?
Yes.
I challenge anybody to do this. You put a Band-Aid on your finger, leave it there for too long, and it's going to get like being in a swimming pool too long. It's going to get wrinkled up and soft and sensitive to the touch.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately for us guys that have been cut, I tell guys all the time up on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, and they just crack up and laugh. I said, if you don't wear underwear, it's the worst thing you can do. And you should be wearing silk panties because the softer the material is on your anatomy, the better off you're going to be, because the longer you let your penis rub against your jeans or something abrasive, you're deadening your penis. They just had a study come out where French women over 50 engage in more sexual activity than Americans or elsewhere.
Well, it makes a lot of sense now that you've explained it, because, I guess I was just one of those people that always thought, well, to myself, this, isn't as great as everyone says it's supposed to be, and it hurts, and, gets me thinking that there's something wrong with me, and I'd just be willing to bet
that's what our doctors tried to tell you. It's you have a problem. You don't have a problem. You're having sex with a cut male is the problem. Sexual intercourse should be enjoyable and pleasurable and no pain associated. Well, of course, unless he's too big. But so
Bring it on.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
You think about it. We've already talked about the rubbing of the vaginal wall raw, and that's because of the cut male. We've talked about the ridge band of sexual nerves, which is where the male has to get his pleasure. One of the things I told you about that banner that says it's black with the white letters, and it says, whose penis, whose body, whose rights. Mm-hmm. These junior and senior high kids come running up to us. They want a photo with that sign in front of the U.S. Capitol, banner rather, that has the word penis on it. Well, nice. I have these blue cards. They're almost 3x5s, which I told you about the 15 inches of skin missing off the adult male. And I start handing these cards out to these future parents. And when I start telling them that circumcision got started in the 1860s to try to stop boys from masturbating, and they look at me and they go, well, it didn't stop me. And I go, you're right. But I said, I bet you use... David.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to interrupt here, but it is that time. Okay, so we're going to pick this up after this short break. Stay tuned, everyone. Last segment coming up after this short break. See you on the other side. Welcome back. Taking it easy here tonight. David Wilson here on Truth Brigade Radio. Thank you so much for joining us about this very important topic. You can find more about it and how to get involved at David's website. That's stopinfantcircumcision.org. And David, before we went to the break, you were starting to tell us a story about how the teenagers were asking you for that photo and you started talking with their parents. So please continue.
Well, we have this banner, like I said, it's 4x10, something like that. It's black with white letters, and it's very visible on the west side of the U.S. Capitol. And these junior, senior high kids, they come running up just to take a photo with this banner because it's got the word penis on it, and it's in front of the U.S. Capitol. And I look at these chaperones, and a lot of them, most of them, they say, have at it. This is your First Amendment right. This is a civics lesson and an anatomy lesson all at once. And so most of them just let me go. I'm very vivid when I describe what's going on and talking and everything. But then you'll have these boys, when I tell them, I said, do you know why circumcision got started? It was back in the 1860s as punishment and trying to stop boys from masturbating. And they'll say, well, it didn't stop me. And I go, you're right. But I said, I bet you use a lot of lotion. And they go, oh, yeah, I use a lot of lotion. I said, well, buddy, you weren't born with a bottle of Jergens lotion, but you were born with your foreskin. You should be able to get up over the head of your gland with your foreskin and not have to lube that thing up. And they're looking at me and they're in disbelief because they've never heard this before. And then every now and then there'll be a guy off to the side and he'll go, he knows what he's talking about. And I go, you're intact, aren't you, buddy? And he goes, yeah. And I'll say, boy, when the girls find out about you, you're going to be a wanted man. And then there's the guys the intact guys that would look at his friends and go, see, I told you. And they've been getting made fun of by their circumcised friends because they look like an anteater, an elephant, and this or that. And then after talking to me, it gives their confidence back to them. Just like I was getting ready to tell you about a friend of mine, an acquaintance, I should say. He stopped me going into Merritt Square Mall one day, and he goes, "What's the deal, man?" He goes, "I've always felt insecure," because he's an intact man. And he's always tried to hide that. And yet, because he's been ridiculed, he's probably 15 years younger than me. I'm 58. But he's been ridiculed for being an intact male, and it's given him such a complex. Matter of fact, I know his last girlfriend, and she told me that he kept trying to hide himself. And she finally said, "Look, what's the big deal? I know all about this," and that gave him a different perspective of being whole and intact. Before we get too far down the line here, let me give you a couple more websites for people that I'm associated with. It's doctorsopposingcircumcision.org, great group of doctors. Intact America, Georgia Chapin. She created this maybe 3 years ago, and this has become the umbrella group for all of us, because there's so many splinter groups, Nurses Against Circumcision, doctors, and there's a bunch. And then we also have
mothers,
I've got domains out, Women Against Circumcision and stuff like that. But the other one is the Attorneys for the Rights of the Child. These are the doctors that are suing hospitals around the country. Because after you turn 18 years of age, you got 1 year in which to sue the hospital for your mother and your whatever.
For genital mutilation.
Yeah. And the thing is that they're asking these mothers to sign these consent forms while they're still under some kind of drug for giving birth. And that's one of the other crazy things about giving birth. It's a natural thing, you don't need all these drugs. But yet they tell you need an epidural, you need this and that, it's just running up that pill. But, these people are out here, and they're trying to bring this insanity to an end. When I'm on the west side of the U.S. Capitol, I have a lot of foreign tourists come up to me, and they go, "You've got to be kidding me. They're still doing this here? Canada is almost down to 5% boys being cut today."
Oh, wonderful.
They're shocked. They are shocked to hear. Your Europeans, they come here, and they can't believe Europe quit this right after World War II. They knew this was a mistake. The world was falling into this foreskin frenzy. And like I said, the people they cut today predominantly are your Jews, your Muslims for religious reasons, and your Americans. And let's fall back on the religious thing here for a second. I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago, we had Orthodox Jews, the way that they circumcise their babies, the mohel has to, I probably said that wrong, mohel. After they circumcise the baby, they suck the blood off of his penis.
Wow.
Did you know that?
I did read that. I've seen some photos, I think, from your website, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, well, attach an electrode to that religious man's penis, and let's find out if he's getting aroused. Because in New York, 3 baby boys contracted herpes. The mohel that circumcised these boys had herpes simplex of the mouth. It got transmitted to the genitals of these 3 boys, and 2 of these boys died.
Wow.
Explain that to me. In today's society, we are going to allow a man to circumcise a child and then suck the blood off of his penis. Something ain't right here. Something
Absolutely.
ain't right.
I mean, it's just, how is that different than any other ritual abuse we hear about? But, David, we only have a couple minutes left tonight, and I just wanted to go over a couple. You gave out the website, tlctugger.com, and somebody was asking how long a restoration could take. And when it looks like the process here is basically it stretches the skin, but you still don't get the nerves back. So do we know anyone who's actually done this? And
oh yeah, Ron Lowe, okay. And no, I know a bunch of guys that have done this, and people ask me why I haven't done it, and I said, well, by the time I probably covered up my pecker, probably dropped dead. But being 58, I'm still cranking and everything. What happens is getting back to the Band-Aid syndrome. The longer you let your penis rub on rough material, and guys that wear jeans that don't wear underwear, that's the worst thing you can do, because you're deadening, you're rubbing that gland, and you're deadening it. What happens is you can cover up the head of your gland. You're not going to get the ridge band of nerves back, sexual nerves back, but you're going to make your glands soft and moist again, like a woman's clitoris. We're all born, like I said. We start out in the womb as a female, and then somewhere this extra chromosome screws us up, and we become a male. The covering up that, it's a clitoral hood. You're a woman, you know damn well what I'm talking about. If a male is able to cover up his gland again, you keep it soft and moist and more sensitive to the touch. Unfortunately, you're not going to get back the ridge band and nerves, but you're going to kill or stop the deadening process. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
The longer we let this thing stick out in the air, the deader it's going to get, and especially if it rubs on jeans. That's why I tell these young guys, I say, man, you better wear some silk panties so you can keep that thing soft and sensitive. But it's still not going to solve the female problem, which is the draining out of the lubricants, the vaginal rubbing, and rawness. It's like I said, most men, they say, man, I tore that up last night. Well, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong.
I think I've heard that once or twice, but that's another show. David, I want to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight and informing us about this. And once again, find out how to get involved. Go to your website, stopinfantcircumcision.org. Is there any other way to contact you, David?
Well, I originally took out the domain Sick Society, SICSOCIETY, which stands for Stop Infant Circumcision Society, and it's a sick society. It's a sick society to be out here acting up our kids.
I'm so sorry it is that time, though. I want to thank you. You did a wonderful job tonight, and thank you all for joining us here